My father banned me from the family meeting, said I had nothing to offer, called me poor. My brothers smirked. Can't even afford a car. I stayed quiet, swallowing the same shame I'd carried my whole life. Then the roar split the air. A helicopter cut across the Colorado sky, shaking the old wooden fence. Dust rose. Faces froze. My mother clutched her chest and fainted. I stepped forward, voice steady. My ride's here. For the first time, silence belonged to me. I'm about to share something close to my heart. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments? Or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story can reach. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And if this story touches you, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world. Sometimes the only thing someone like me needs is to know my voice is being heard. My name is James Kane, and this is my story. The taxi rattled down the dirt road that curved toward the old Kane ranch, the late autumn light casting long shadows through the pines. I wore a faded flannel shirt and jeans frayed at the knees, the same clothes I'd worn 100 times in Denver. As the cab rolled to a stop by the wooden fence, dust curled in the air like smoke. Mason stood on the porch, arms crossed, that familiar sneer tugging at his mouth. "Can't even afford a car, huh?" he called out. His words sliced through me like they always had, as if time had never passed. Mom hurried forward, pressing a warm box of baked goods into my hands before I could answer. Her smile was thin, laced with worry. Dad lingered behind her, one hand gripping the porch rail, eyes measuring me the way a man weighs cattle. His silence spoke louder than Mason's mockery. I stepped inside the house, greeted not by warmth, but by interrogation. Questions flew at me like darts. Was I still tinkering with those little computer projects? Did I have a steady job? Was I eating enough? I gave short replies, not denying, not confirming, letting their assumptions hang in the air. My eyes caught the family photos lining the shelf, every frame a reminder. Mason front and center in his football jersey. Lila radiant in her cheer uniform. Me always pushed to the edge, half hidden, a ghost in my own family portrait. Through the window I saw the old barn where I once coded late into the night, dreaming of something bigger. They never remembered that. What they remembered was me dropping out of college, the shame of a son who couldn't follow the path they mapped. They never knew that when the floods came, the anonymous check that saved the ranch had been mine. To them, it was Mason's triumph. To me, it was another secret swallowed whole. The living room filled with the smell of dinner, but the air was heavy. Mason clicked open his laptop slides, waiting for the family meeting. He outlined numbers, costs, proposals for how we'd split the burden of Mom and Dad's care. "I'll take 50%. Lila and Wyatt 40. James can cover 400 a month or drive them around. That's fair." His eyes lingered on me, daring me to object. Dad nodded as if it made sense. Mom wrung her hands, murmuring about not wanting to be a burden. I said nothing. The truth sat on my tongue, hot and bitter. $60 million and a company that bore my name, and still I was the boy they called useless. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Nora, my assistant in Denver. "Do you want me to arrange the special transport for tomorrow?" I typed back one word. Not yet. Later, when I slipped outside, the mountains stretched dark against the fading sky. The air was sharp with pine. I stared at the Rockies, knowing I could shatter their illusions with a sentence. But not tonight. Tonight I'd let their words stand. I needed to see what they truly wanted before I pulled the mask from my face. The basement smelled of dust and cold stone, the kind of damp that clings to skin. I flicked on the light and descended past shelves sagging with old jars and farming ledgers. My eyes landed on the battered table where I once set up my first laptop, its fan wheezing like a dying horse. I remembered the night I left this place. $300 in my wallet, nothing but stubbornness in my chest. 3 startups. 3 failures. Nights in a roach-ridden Denver apartment where the heat cut out in January, where I lived on day-old bread while drawing diagrams of algorithms that never worked. I can still feel the ache of sleeping beside stacks of notes, praying one idea would hold. It finally did. Kane Shield. a cloud security patent that caught fire. The company grew fast, survived everything I couldn't. 6 months ago, the buyout closed at $60 million. People called me a prodigy. They didn't know I drove a rusted pickup, wore thrift store flannels, and poured my money into STEM centers in towns that looked like Ashwood. I never wanted wealth to be the loudest thing about me. I pulled open a cabinet drawer and found an old envelope marked Flood Relief 20XX. Inside, a carbon copy of the transfer receipt, my transfer, the money that had saved this ranch when the river rose. Tucked in the same folder was Mom's notebook, her handwriting curling across the page. Mason really came through for us. So proud of him. I stood there, paper trembling in my hand chest, tight. They never knew it was me. Mason had cashed a bonus that week, and the coincidence sealed the story. I had let them believe it. Another sacrifice swallowed for the sake of peace. I could tell them now. I could lay the proof on the table, watch their faces shift, demand the recognition I'd never had. But it would sound like revenge, like I wanted credit more than connection. That wasn't the story I wanted told. I slipped the papers back into the envelope, pressed it shut. My phone screen lit up in my palm. I opened a note, typed the words, Ashwood Care. The name of the foundation I had already seeded in town, the place that could give my parents dignity without shipping them off to Boulder. I would show them when the time was right. For now, I would stay in my role, the quiet son, the simple one. Let their assumptions build brick on brick until the truth would break them clean. I turned off the light, climbed the stairs, and inhaled the scent of bread drifting from the kitchen. I would sit at the table tonight as James, the one they thought had nothing. Tomorrow they would learn just how wrong they had been. The dining room smelled like baked bread and seared beef, the oak table glinting under yellow light as if someone had polished the past and laid it out for show. A big TV was mounted on the wall and already mirrored Mason's laptop. My chair bumped the corner of the table when I sat a little off-axis, the same way I always seem to land in family photos. Mom pushed a basket of rolls toward me with a hopeful look. Dad set his water down and gave the nod that meant get on with it. Mason cleared his throat and clicked to the first slide. Numbers marched across the screen. Here's the reality, he said, pacing like a partner in a courtroom. Care in Boulder will run about $8,000 a month. We need consistent adult planning. I'll cover 50%. Lila and Wyatt can take 40. James can do $400 a month. Or he can handle transportation and errands. He glanced at me as if he'd offered a generous promotion. Lila folded her hands beneath her chin, the diamond on her finger catching the light. The Boulder facility is gorgeous, she said. I know the board chair through the Gala network. They have a memory garden, music therapy, farm-to-table meals. Wyatt leaned back with the posture of a man who believed rooms were built to fit him. I'm finalizing a resort project just outside town, he said, casual but calculated. Some aligned partnerships could keep costs lean. The facility contracts out a lot of services. We can help them help us. Are you still doing your computer things, Dad asked me. He tried to make it sound neutral and missed. Are you eating enough? Mom added softer. You look thin. I'm fine, I said. The words came out even. It was easier to be a mirror than a flame. Mason clicked to a slide with columns and tidy green bars. We should sign tonight, he said. Momentum matters. He slid a bundle of papers toward me. These outline responsibilities. Nothing scary. I lifted the packet. The paper was smooth, expensive. My name appeared in a boxed section at the bottom of page 2, secondary financial guarantor. A check mark sat next to verbal agreement obtained. I read it twice. The attestation line below carried a quick, confident signature. Wyatt. Next to it, a phone number I didn't recognize labeled confirming contact. My chest tightened, not with surprise, but with the steady pressure of being handled. I flipped pages, careful to say nothing, while my mind mapped exits. Lila was saying something about a silent auction for the gala and how the Boulder director had admired her initiative. Dad asked if the facility had a shuttle to Denver for specialist appointments. Mom gripped the edge of the table like the planning itself might keep her standing. Zeph Mason asked, voice light, eyes hard. All good. Just reading, I said. I returned the pages to their clip. Nice graphs. He laughed. Some of us had to study how to make those. The room warmed by degrees. The kinder words were harder to bear than the cold ones. They were a way of locking me into the version of me they preferred. Lila told a story about a donor who'd sobbed on her shoulder and called her a saint. Wyatt chimed in with dates and contacts. The TV screen rotated to a slideshow of glossy courtyards and smiling nurses. A violin track from someone's playlist bled through the speakers like staged empathy. I took a roll to give my hands a job. Butter melted into the crust, a small, stubborn mercy. When Mom refilled my water, she whispered, "We just want what's best for everyone." I believed her. That was the trouble. People could hurt you with their best as completely as with their worst, James' dad said. You could drive us to appointments. That would mean a lot. No paperwork. Just show up. I can show up, I said. It was true and not the whole truth. Wyatt tapped the pages again. If we don't sign, we lose our place in line, he said. My contact's holding it as a courtesy. I told him we were aligned. Did you? I said. My eyes drifted to the bottom margin where my supposed consent lived in neat black ink. I kept my voice steady. I didn't give a verbal agreement. Wyatt's smile didn't reach his eyes. Must be a miscommunication. Mason cut back in with a fresh slide, timelines color-coded. He talked about dignity and peace of mind, about a plan that protected everyone from chaos. It was persuasive. It would be more persuasive to people who believed I had little to give beyond time and gas money. My phone buzzed. A message from Nora. Travel window tomorrow is wide open. Want me to lock it? I set the phone face down and looked out the window. The lawn stretched long and flat beneath the porch lights, a clean rectangle of possibility. When the plates were scraped and the violin track looped for the third time, Mason capped his water and faced me. We're all making sacrifices here, he said. It would be nice to hear you step up with something concrete. I slid the packet back across the table, smoothing the corner so it sat square against the wood. Tomorrow, I said, calm as I could make it. I want you to see something else first. Silence braided through the room. Dad frowned. Mom blinked. Wyatt's jaw ticked. Lila studied me like I'd spoken a language she hadn't heard in years. The slides on the TV shifted to a stock photo of a sunlit hallway that looked like heaven if heaven had a brand sponsor. Something else, Mason repeated. What, another lecture, just daylight, I said. And a short trip. I stood, gathered my plate, and carried it to the sink. The clink of porcelain felt louder than the violin. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices rose and fell, and the plan tried to hold itself together with polite phrases. I dried my hands on a dish towel and caught my reflection in the window. The mountains were only a shadow now. Tomorrow they would be a line of stone under a bright, unforgiving sun. I pocketed my phone and sent Nora a single reply. Morning. I went to bed with the firmness of the papers still ghosting the pads of my fingers and the lawn's straight edges burned into my mind. Dawn came thin and silver, the kind of light that makes breath show in the air. Mist clung low over the pasture. The barn's roof glittered with frost that would burn off by 10. I stepped onto the porch and found Mason already there, jacket unzipped, coffee steaming in his hand. The packet of documents lay on the coffee table inside exactly where we'd left it, like an animal holding its breath. Decision time, he said. Do you sign or not? I'm leaving for a bit, I said. You'll all want to be ready soon. He angled closer. So that's a no. Shocking. He let the word hang. You've coasted on this family's name for years. Parasites look busy too if you squint. I kept my eyes on the pasture. There are other options, I said. None that don't blow up in our faces, he snapped. Stop trying to be difficult. The screen door creaked and Lila stepped out, hair tucked inside a beanie, cheeks pink from the cold. We're not fighting at sunrise, she said, too bright to be sincere. She squeezed my arm. By the way, thank you again, she added, turning toward Mason. For the flood help back then. We never would have made it otherwise. I felt the envelope in my jacket like a heartbeat against my ribs. The paper crinkled when I adjusted my stance. I swallowed and said nothing. Wyatt's SUV pulled up from the lane, headlights still on in the pale light. He climbed out in a tailored overcoat that didn't belong to a ranch morning. I've got a call with the resort team at 9, he said, brushing an invisible speck from his sleeve. They're eager about aligning with the Boulder facility. Catering, transport, the works. It's a win-win. Win-win, I repeated, watching the steam from his breath dissolve. The phrase fit him like the coat. He stepped inside to grab his tablet. Through the glass I could see the TV screen still black, the laptop closed, the packet fanned in orderly layers. A small flash drive lay beside it, a matte black sliver with a red cap. When Wyatt came back out, he patted his coat pockets, frowned, then waved it off like whatever he was missing couldn't matter. I slipped into the living room after him under the pretense of finding more coffee. I picked up the flash drive and rolled it between my fingers. The weight was nothing. I plugged it into the side of the TV's media port and tapped the remote. A folder list appeared, one of them labeled Family Leverage. I opened it. A document filled the screen. A title in bold: Strategy Equity via Collateralization. Bullet points mapped out steps that read like a script. Encourage parents to sign a limited power of attorney for efficiency. Position care decision as time-sensitive. Secure a lien using ranch acreage as collateral to unlock better loan terms for resort expansion. A final line mason to manage legal dock flow. Wyatt to present as logistics support. The coffee in my stomach turned to ice. I took a photo of the screen with my phone and ejected the drive. When I stepped back onto the porch, Wyatt was laughing into his call about a soft close and family consensus. The words scraped like gravel. Lila stood by the railing, hugging herself. He leaves before I wake up, she said quietly, not looking at me. Comes home after I'm asleep. People think we're perfect. I wish I didn't care what people think. Her eyes met mine for a second, glassy and tired. Mason had moved to the top of the steps, guarding the exit as if I'd try to run. Say you'll sign, he said. Stop playing games. What I'll do, I said, is show you something that makes this unnecessary. He laughed short and sharp. The only thing unnecessary is you. His voice rose the way it did when he wanted a crowd to hear. When are you going to admit you're nothing, James? That you weren't built for real responsibility? The air pinched my lungs. For years I had responded to that tone by disappearing. I didn't this time. There are things you don't know, I said. I let the words sit there plain. Wyatt ended his call and rejoined us all, polite impatience. If we're doing the tour of the facility today, I need to confirm with my contact, he said. They'll roll out the red carpet. We won't need it, I said. Of course we will, Mason said. You want dignity for Mom and Dad? Stop stalling. Mom opened the door behind us. Cardigan wrapped tight Dad at her shoulder. What's going on? She asked, voice threadbare. Just logistics, Mason said, brightening falsely. We're planning next steps. I met Dad's eyes. In them I saw the bleached summers, the busted fences, the years he believed he had a strong son and a weak one. I saw the humility that had never reached me. Get your coats, I said. Both of you. Bring nothing else. Mason barked a laugh. Where are we going? The scenic route to a no. I pulled my phone from my pocket and typed a message with my thumb. 15 minutes, I sent to Nora. Somewhere beyond the trees, the day began to clear. The mist lifted like a curtain. The pasture, flat and unwavering, waited. The packet on the table behind the glass no longer looked like a plan. It looked like a costume someone had forgotten to take off. I felt the envelope in my jacket again, the old paper warm from my body heat, the truth ready to be handled instead of hidden. 15 minutes, I repeated, putting the phone away. You'll see. By noon, the sky was a clean, burning blue. Shadows fell short beneath the oak that had watched all our arguments and harvests. Inside, Mason had Dad at the table again, pen poised, the ranch map spread like a patient on a gurney. Wyatt kept pointing to a line item that would unlock liquidity, his tone smooth as varnish. Dad, sign here, Mason said. It's a formality. We can't stall. Hold on, I said, stepping between the map and his pen. There's something more important. Mason's eyes flashed. More important than care for our parents. Watch, I said. The first thump came from far off, a low beat that made the window glass tremble. Another beat closer. Forks paused mid-air. Wyatt's head cocked, calculating. We filed out onto the porch as the sound swelled a cyclone of air hitting the eaves. The helicopter cleared the tree-lined sun, bouncing off its nosegrass, rippling under the force. Dust lifted in sheets. The old fence shivered like a tuning fork. Mom made a small sound and swayed, then folded in Dad's arms. He caught her face drained of color. Lila grabbed Mom's shoulders while I steadied them both. The skids kissed down on the lawn, wind thrashing the oak leaves into silver. I stepped into the yard, hair whipped across my forehead, and lifted my voice so it could carry through the noise. My ride is here. Mason's mouth opened and closed a fish in air. No, he said. But it sounded like he was asking the day to start over. The pilot signaled. I motioned toward the cabin. We're going for a quick flight, I said. All of us. I'm not stepping into that circus, Mason shouted back. This is performative, James. Then stay, I said. But Mom, Dad, Lila, come with me. 10 minutes. Wyatt hesitated, eyes tracking the possibilities like figures on a balance sheet. Lila took my hand, fear and curiosity fighting across her face. I'm coming, she said, voice thin but steady. We buckled, Mom beside the window, Dad next to her, Lila across from me. Their fingers found each other and held. The pilot lifted and the ranch dropped away like a postcard someone let go of. Ashwood spread beneath us, patchwork fields, the main street stitched with trucks, the creek flashing like a thread of foil. I pointed out the old hardware store where I'd bought my first soldering kit. We banked toward the edge of town where a low brick building sat with a new roof and a mural of children launching paper airplanes into a bright painted sky. That's the STEM Center, I said through the headset. Opened last spring. A second roofline appeared beyond it, a small library annex, glass doors reflecting the hills. On the lawn, a metal plaque caught the noon light. Mom leaned forward, squinting. The pilot dipped slightly so the angle cleared. You could read it now from the air. Kane Community Library, Annex, donated in honor of the children of Ashwood. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Dad stared hard, trying to place the words in a world that had always put me at the margins. Lila pressed her palm to the window as if she could touch the sign from the sky. We swung back over the highway past the water tower with the peeling bear mascot, past the pasture where the summer fair set up its rides, and then the pilot banked again. Ahead, just outside town, 30 acres unfurled in a clean geometry, a blue oval of pond, a line of young aspens, and beyond them a low modern structure of glass and steel placed like a thought at the edge of the earth. A helipad shone like a coin in the grass. We settled onto the pad. The rotors slowed, the world stitched itself together, and the wind dropped to a hush broken only by the spill of water along the pond's edge. I unbuckled, climbed out, and opened the cabin door for my parents. Welcome, I said, offering my arm to Mom as she stepped down. To where I really live. The front door recognized me and unlocked with a soft click. Cool air met us, touched with cedar and clean metal. Sunlight poured through the high glass and pooled across polished concrete. In the reflections, I saw all of us at once older than we meant to be, younger than we admitted. Come on, I said. There's more to see. We walked the corridor past framed schematics and photographs of kids standing over robots they'd built from scrap. Lila trailed her fingers along the glass, leaving faint smudges that vanished as the temperature equalized. She stopped at the lab, eyes sweeping over workbenches and 3D printers, the quiet hum of a server rack like a heartbeat in the next room. You did all this, she whispered. By yourself. Not by myself, I said. With a team. With time. I gestured toward the Rockies beyond the window, etched against a sky so clear it felt new minted. And with a lot of mistakes. In the main room, I asked them to sit. The couch faced the mountains, the glass a sheet that made distance feel like a promise you could keep. I stood where they could see me and where I could see every reflection, theirs and mine, layered on the view. I should have said this sooner, I began. Kane Shield sold 6 months ago. 60 million. I didn't tell you because I needed to know if you'd listen to me without a number attached. Mason, who had finally arrived with Wyatt in tow, laughed once, harsh and bright. So you hid it, he said. You let us call you unreliable so you could stage this reveal. I let you think what you already believed, I said, keeping my voice even. That was my mistake. But hiding wasn't about punishing you. It was about protecting what I am when nobody's asking for a resume. Dad's hands were clasped white in his lap. Mom watched me like she was learning to read my face for the first time. There's something else, I said, and laid a folder on the table. Ashwood Care. It's already funded, staffed, here in town. It focuses on cardiac and joint care with real gardens, home-style meals, visiting nurses who know the roads we drive. You don't have to move to Boulder. You don't have to sign anything with a corporation that calls you a bed. We can take care of you here. Mom reached for the brochure and traced the photo of a kitchen big enough for a long table. Dad breathed out like a man setting down a bale he hadn't realized he was still carrying. I took out a second envelope, the old one that had lived in my jacket since dawn, and slid out the photocopy. And this, I said, placing the paper between us, is the transfer from the flood year. Mom's eyes fell to the line with the amount, the date, the masked account number. Her mouth opened on a sound that didn't make it to words. She looked at Mason, then back at me, then at her own handwriting, Xeroxed faintly on the back page where she'd once written a blessing for the anonymous donor. The room went as quiet as a church with the windows open. I let you think it was him, I said softly. Because it made you feel safe. Her hand trembled. I thanked the wrong son, she said, voice breaking apart. You thanked your children for surviving a hard year, I said. That's not wrong. Lila sat forward, elbows on her knees, face raw. I keep making my life look perfect so nobody sees the cracks, she said. Wyatt is gone before sunrise and home after midnight. I smile at Galas and pretend that's meaning. I'm so tired of arranging flowers for other people while my house is empty. Wyatt straightened like he'd been named in a deposition. If you'd told me any of this earlier, he said to me, tone tightening, the resort plan could have integrated with your projects. Opportunities lost because you played mystery man. There it was, the respect that started and ended with leverage. I pictured the file from his drive, the bullet points, the sentence about collateral. I saw your plan, I said. The one where the ranch underwrites your expansion. The one where a signature, for efficiency, moves Dad's authority into your hands and Mason's. Wyatt's jaw flexed. That was a draft, he said. You're taking it out of context. Mason's face flushed the dark red that always lived 1 inch below his skin. We were trying to stabilize this family. He said, words landing like nails. You vanish for years, then appear with a helicopter and expect us to applaud. You let me look like the responsible one so you could ride in and play savior. I expected us to talk, I said. Not to trap each other with paperwork and favors. The air thinned. The mountains outside sharpened until they looked like they could cut. Each of us had our reflection hanging in the glass, a second self overlaid on the world. Every mask we'd worn flickered there, then faltered under the weight of daylight. Dad's voice came rough, but clear. I wanted sons who stayed, he said, eyes on his hands. I didn't see the son who built. He looked up at me and blinked hard. I see you now. Mom pressed her lips together, tears standing but not falling. Lila reached across the table for my hand and squeezed like an apology you could feel in bone. Wyatt watched the exchange, doing the math of it. Mason grabbed the Boulder packet from his briefcase and flung it onto the glass table. The pages skidded and fanned graphs and guarantees and signatures scattering like birds. I'm not letting you run this family with cash, he said, voice shaking. You don't get to buy forgiveness. I'm not buying anything, I said. I'm making space for the truth. We've all been performing so long we forgot who we were before the costumes. I don't want to win. I want us to stop pretending. He stared at me as if that was the worst thing I could have said. The room held its breath. Outside, a breeze combed the aspens and turned their leaves into a soft silver noise. We've been wearing masks too long, I said, finally, not looking away. All of us. No one argued. For a crack of a second, the silence wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. Then Mason's jaw set, and I knew the fight wasn't finished. We had only torn the first seam. We ate under the cathedral of glass fire, feathering the stone hearth, the white tablecloth gleaming like snow. The wine was too red, the knives too bright, and every reflection in the windows turned our faces into masks we could no longer hold. Mason carved into the silence first. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He asked why I hid the company, why I kept the centers quiet, why I waited until now to throw it in everyone's faces. He said the helicopter was theater. He said I'd humiliated him. He said I'd humiliated all of them. I set my fork down and let the heat from the fire warm the sting in my throat. I was quiet because I was scared, I said. Scared that if you knew the number, you'd stop seeing me. I wanted one thing left that wasn't purchased: your willingness to hear me without a ledger open. Lila's glass shook against the plate. Do you know how much pretending costs? She said, voice so small we had to lean in to catch it. I dress a room until no one can see the cracks in my own house. I make a gala look like salvation and go home to a bed that remembers only my side. I thought if I kept smiling, the story would turn. It doesn't. Dad coughed into his napkin and kept coughing until the cough emptied him out. His hand went to his chest. Mom was up in a flash chairs, scraping linen skewed. Please, she said, gripping his shoulder, eyes wide on both of us. Enough. No more fighting. I rose and slid a folder across the table, the one with the simple cream cover and our town's name stamped in blue. You don't have to go to Boulder, I said, softer than before. There's a place here. Garden's a kitchen that smells like real bread nurses who know our roads. It's ready. It's yours if you want it. Mason laughed, but there was no air in it. Of course you have a counter-proposal, he said. His knife tapped a steady metronome he couldn't hear. Then his face bent, and for once the anger wasn't aimed only at me. You think law is my dream? I hate it. Every morning I put on the suit and sell a person I don't believe in anymore. I stayed because Dad looked at me like I mattered when I brought home paychecks and case wins. You're not the only one who wears a costume until it bruises. Wyatt had kept his calm all evening, voice smooth, posture perfect, but his control cracked. We needed the ranch to make the numbers work, he snapped. If someone had been honest sooner, the resort could have aligned with your projects, we could have leveraged. He cut himself off, but it was too late. Lila's head turned toward him like a compass, jerking north, her eyes going glassy and hard. Mom sank back into her chair, fingers pressed to her lips. Dad steadied his breathing and looked at me across the candles and the red wine and the line of silver. We made you believe you were worth less than the ground you walked on, he said, thin but clear. And all this time you've been carrying us. The room held still. The fire settled. Outside, the mountains kept their ancient shape. I pushed my chair back and felt the weight of the glass wall at my back like a witness. If we can't be ourselves in this room, I said, then every house and car and title we've ever chased is just another chain. Tonight, the pretending ends. No one moved. The reflections in the glass flickered, and for a breath the people in the window looked more honest than the ones at the table. I gathered the folder back into my hands and left it where Mom could reach it. The fire snapped. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote called, and the sound ran along the hillside like a wire humming with current. We sat with it, not allies yet, not enemies either, only a family out of alibis. Morning rose soft and pale over the mountains, the kind of light that slips through glass and makes everything look new. We gathered around the small kitchen table instead of the long one. No silver, no wine, just coffee mugs and plates of toast. It felt right, stripped of ceremony. For the first time in years, we weren't actors in a play. I spoke first. I owe you the truth. Cane Shield was sold for $60 million. I built these labs, the center, the library, all of it, because I wanted kids like us to see more than fences and fields. I stayed silent because I needed to know if you'd love me without the number. I paused, the steam from my coffee twisting between us. But I was wrong to keep you in the dark. I should have trusted words over spectacle. Mason rubbed his eyes, the fight gone from his voice. I can't keep practicing law. It's killing me. I want to teach, maybe coach. I don't know how, but I want out. I leaned forward, met his gaze. Then let me help you. Not with money, with a plan. But you have to choose it for yourself. Lila's voice cracked as she admitted what we already sensed. I want to stop pretending my marriage is fine. I want to build something of my own. I want to learn to code, to create. I smiled at her, not as a brother proving her wrong, but as one finally listening. Come to the center. Start fresh. We'll make space for your voice. Mom reached across the table, her fingers trembling in mine. We thought love was steering you towards safety. We didn't see we were cutting you down instead. Dad cleared his throat, steady now. I called you weak when you were building strength I couldn't measure. I see you now. Outside, the door shut gently. Wyatt leaving without a word. Lila watched him go, her silence speaking louder than anything she could say. Moments later, Caleb arrived with the first group of kids, their laughter spilling into the house like wind through open windows. The rooms filled with a new kind of noise, one that belonged here. We toured the lab together, showed the children how machines hummed to life. Mom laughed with them, Dad gave advice on engines. Mason stood straighter when a boy asked about coaching, and Lila touched a keyboard like she was opening a door. Caleb pulled out his phone, lined us up, and snapped a photo. No one hid. No one was pushed aside. I looked at the faces in that picture and felt something lift. Real wealth, I told them, isn't this house or a helicopter. It's being true to yourself, and knowing the people you love can be too. The Rockies glowed in the distance, and for the first time light passed through the glass without distortion, touching all of us the same. When I look back at everything that happened, I realize this story was never about money or about a helicopter landing in a field to silence old insults. It was about the ache of being misunderstood by the very people whose approval I craved, and the long years I spent building something in the shadows, hoping one day the truth could stand on its own. I kept quiet because I was afraid that if I spoke, I would only be measured against a number. But silence came with its own cost. It allowed lies to grow roots, allowed my family to believe I was less than I was, and worst of all, it convinced me for a long time that maybe they were right. That night, when every mask cracked, when voices shook and hands trembled, it felt like loss. But in the quiet that followed, I realized it was release. The shouting was only a door breaking open. Behind it was a chance to be known fully and honestly without the armor I had carried for so long. I saw my brother admit his unhappiness, my sister confess her loneliness, my parents face the weight of their own expectations. For the first time, we weren't competing for approval or pretending to be whole. We were just human, raw and flawed, finally ready to meet each other without disguises. And in that moment, I understood something I wish I had known years earlier. Real wealth isn't in assets or titles or applause. It's in the courage to tell the truth about who you are and the grace to let others do the same. That's the kind of inheritance worth leaving behind. If you've ever felt dismissed, underestimated, or silenced, know that you are not alone. There is power in your story, even in the parts that hurt. Sharing it, even whispering it into the world, can change more than you think. Before I end, I want to ask something simple. Let me know you're here. Drop a hi in the comments or tell me where you're from. Sometimes knowing someone is listening makes all the difference. And if my story touched you, please subscribe to this channel. Your support means more than views or numbers. It's proof that voices like mine, voices that were once ignored, are finally being heard. My name is James Kane, and this was my story. Thank you for staying with me until the end.